Walking alone at night feels normal, until you realize you're not alone. Footsteps behind you, a whisper in your ear, a figure standing too still, staring too long. These are the moments when a simple walk turns into a nightmare. Tonight, I'll share 3 terrifying true stories of people who walked and barely made it home. Stay alert, because after this, you might never walk alone again. Story 1. The Shadow on the Trail. Marcus was an avid night walker, preferring the quiet and solitude of the empty streets. One night, he decided to take a shortcut through a forest trail near his apartment, a path he'd walked dozens of times. But that night, something was different. The incident. As Marcus strolled through the dirt path, his footsteps crunching against the dried leaves, he noticed something strange. A second pair of footsteps. The problem? They only echoed after his own. He stopped. Silence. He resumed walking. The footsteps followed. His pulse quickened, and he glanced around, but the trees swayed innocently under the moonlight. Then, in his peripheral vision, he saw it. A shadowy figure standing off the trail, its head cocked unnaturally to the side. Marcus picked up his pace. He told himself it was his imagination, but the footsteps kept following, and getting closer. As he reached the end of the trail, he couldn't resist looking back. That was his mistake. The figure was no longer in the woods. It was right behind him, pale, featureless, and grinning. The aftermath. Marcus sprinted toward the streetlights, his breath ragged. When he finally reached his apartment and slammed the door shut, he turned to lock it. Through the peephole, there was nothing but the empty hallway. That night, he slept with the lights on. But at 3 a.m., his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Why did you run? Story 2. The Man in the Alley. Liam had always walked home from work. It was a short, quiet path through a few side streets and a dimly lit alleyway that cut his commute in half. He had done this walk hundreds of times without incident. But one cold autumn night, that routine changed forever. As he exited his workplace, he felt a strange tension in the air, like something was off, though he couldn't pinpoint why. The streets were quieter than usual, the streetlights flickering, casting long, eerie shadows. Pulling his hoodie over his head, he stepped into the alleyway. Halfway through, he heard footsteps, not behind him, not in front of him, but above him. His breath caught in his throat as he instinctively looked up. The fire escape on the side of the building was shaking, as if someone had just leapt onto it. The shadows concealed most of the figure, but he could make out the outline of a tall, lanky man, crouching on the metal stairs, his head tilted in an unnatural way, as if he were studying Liam. Liam quickened his pace, heart hammering in his chest. That's when he heard a whisper, a low, raspy voice from above. I see you. Panic surged through him. He didn't look back. He sprinted out of the alley, his footsteps echoing against the walls. But the sound of movement above him didn't stop. The man was following him, leaping from fire escape to fire escape, keeping up effortlessly. Liam bolted toward the nearest main street, gasping for air. Just as he reached the bright glow of a street lamp, the sound stopped. He turned around, panting, but the alley was empty. The fire escapes were still. The eerie silence sent chills through his body. Maybe it was his imagination. Maybe the darkness played tricks on him. But when he got home and collapsed onto his bed, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A single photo. It was blurry but unmistakable. It was him, running in the alley. And in the corner of the image, a shadowy figure clinging to a fire escape, watching him. Liam never took that shortcut again. But some nights, when he walks past the alley from a safer distance, he swears he can hear faint whispers from above. Silent stalker. Mia had always been cautious, especially when walking home alone after dark. She carried her keys between her fingers, kept her music volume low, and always stayed in well-lit areas. But on this particular night, none of that mattered. It started as a typical walk home from a friend's house. The air was crisp, the street was empty, and the only sound was the rhythmic tapping of her boots against the pavement. She turned a corner and suddenly got that feeling. The one that makes your skin crawl, that instinct that tells you someone is watching. She glanced over her shoulder. The street behind her was empty. She picked up her pace. A minute later, she checked again. Still nothing. But then, she heard it. Footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, and matched her own pace. She stopped. They stopped. Her breath hitched. She turned her head slightly and caught a glimpse of something or someone just beyond the nearest street lamp. A tall figure, standing in the shadows, not moving, not making a sound, just standing there, watching. Mia's pulse pounded in her ears. She walked faster. The footsteps followed. She reached into her pocket and clutched her phone, preparing to call someone, anyone. But before she could dial, she saw a car approaching up ahead. Desperate for safety, she stepped into the street and waved. The car slowed, its headlights illuminating the road behind her. That's when she saw it. The figure wasn't far behind her now. The light from the car revealed his face, pale, blank, almost unnatural. But his mouth, it was twisted into an unnatural grin, stretching too wide. The driver, a middle-aged woman, rolled down the window, concern in her eyes. "Are you okay?" Mia hesitated, glancing back, but the figure was gone. She blinked, her stomach twisting. There was no way he could have disappeared that fast. Shaking, she forced a smile and told the driver she was fine. The woman nodded and drove away. Mia didn't run home, but she walked faster than she ever had before. When she reached her apartment, she slammed the door shut and locked every bolt. That night, she barely slept. And when she woke up the next morning, she decided to check the security camera feed from outside her building. Her stomach dropped. At 3:04 a.m., just minutes after she had entered, the camera caught something. A tall figure standing outside the building, just beyond the streetlight's reach. But the most chilling part? He never moved. He just stood there, smiling, for over an hour. And then, without warning, he simply walked away. Mia never walked home alone at night again, but she still wonders, what would have happened if she had ignored that feeling? Final thoughts. Walking alone at night is something most of us have done without a second thought. But these stories serve as a chilling reminder. Sometimes the feeling of being watched isn't just paranoia. Whether it's an unseen presence lurking above, a silent figure stalking in the darkness, or someone hiding just beyond the reach of the light. The most terrifying thing is that these encounters were real. So next time you find yourself alone on a quiet street, listen closely. Stay aware. And if you ever feel that gut-wrenching instinct that something isn't right, trust it. Because in the dead of night, when the world is quiet, you never know who or what might be following you.